I want you to close your eyes for a second and just imagine walking through a really dense, old-growth forest.
Oh, I love that. Very peaceful.
Right, you look down, and the ground is covered in this thick, rich carpet of fallen leaves. And you know that in a few months, those leaves are going to decompose. They break down and literally become the exact nutrients that the forest needs to grow new life.
Yeah, it's basically nature's ultimate closed-loop system. I mean, nothing is wasted. Every single thing becomes food for something else.
Exactly. But now, I want you to imagine that exact same forest floor, but it's covered in plastic waste.
Ugh, ruined the vibe.
I know, sorry. But picture it. Bottles, wrappers, those single-use coffee cups, that plastic isn't becoming nutrients for a sapling. It's just going to sit there for, well, hundreds of years, right?
Yeah.
Leaching chemicals, degrading into microplastics, and actively poisoning the soil.
Yeah, it's a super jarring visual, but honestly, it's an incredibly accurate snapshot of how our current global economy interacts with the planet.
It really is.
Like, the data from our sources shows we're operating on a system that currently requires 1.75 Earths to sustain our consumption levels.
Which we obviously don't have.
Right. We are drawing down planetary capital way faster than it can replenish itself.
And the projections in the deep dive sources today show that by 2030, we'll need 2 full planets just to keep this up.
It's totally unsustainable.
So, today's mission. We are taking a deep dive into the source materials surrounding the circular economy. But we're going to bypass the basic definitions you probably already know.
Yeah, we're skipping the Wikipedia summary.
Exactly. Instead, we're looking at how this massive global concept is currently being battle-tested in actual micro-societies. We're talking small, regenerative communities of maybe 5 to 150 people. Okay, let's unpack this.
So to really grasp what these micro-communities are doing differently, we briefly need to frame the macro problem they're, actively subverting.
The linear economy.
Exactly. The linear economy. What we often call take, make, waste. It is responsible for over 80% of global biodiversity loss.
80%? Wow.
Yeah. Because it's an economic model that fundamentally assumes infinite resources on a totally finite planet.
Which is physically impossible.
Right. The circular alternative, however, is built on 3 overlapping principles. First, eliminate waste and pollution right at the design stage. Second, circulate products and materials at their highest value for as long as possible. And third, regenerate nature.
That third point, regeneration, that really stands out in the literature for me because, often when major corporations talk about sustainability, they just focus on hitting net zero.
Oh, yeah. The buzzword.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the goal is simply to just not make things worse. But circularity goes far beyond just doing less harm.
Way beyond. Circularity isn't about restoring a degraded ecosystem to a neutral baseline. It's about creating a net positive impact.
It's regenerative by design.
Exactly. The research highlights agricultural biofilters as a really prime mechanical example of this.
Oh, I love this example.
Right, because in a standard linear system, agricultural runoff pollutes local water sources with excess nitrogen and phosphorus, which creates these huge dead zones.
Well, but in a regenerative circular system, you install specific biofilters that actively capture those exact nutrients right out of the water.
Yes. And
then you basically scrape those captured nutrients off the filters and reuse them as fertilizer for the next crop cycle. It's brilliant.
It really is. You are solving a toxic pollution problem and creating a high-value agricultural resource at the exact same time. You're completely rethinking the entire concept of waste.
Okay, so let me try an analogy here. The linear economy is essentially treating the earth as a giant disposable coffee cup. You drink the resources, you throw the cup away.
Good analogy, yeah.
But the circular economy is treating the earth like a library. We're just checking out the molecules, whether that's aluminum, wood, agricultural nutrients, whatever. And we have a strict obligation to return them when we're done so the next person can check them out.
I love that. You're borrowing the structural integrity of the materials without claiming perpetual ownership. And the economic upsides to this library model are undeniably massive.
Oh, for sure.
The sources point out that simply recycling aluminum saves up to 95% of the energy required to make it from scratch.
95%. That is wild.
Right? Because you are completely bypassing the incredibly energy-intensive process of mining bauxite ore, transporting it across oceans, and, smelting it at massive temperatures.
Plus, shifting to a circular model creates incredible opportunities for localized job creation, right?
Right.
Like in sectors like repair, refurbishment, remanufacturing.
Yeah, you essentially trade destructive resource extraction overseas for highly skilled human labor right in your own community.
But of course, the sources also dive pretty deeply into the dark side of this transition. Transforming global economics is fraught with traps.
Oh, absolutely. It's not all sunshine and biofilters.
Right, and the first major hurdle is greenwashing. Major corporations will frequently adopt the language of circularity just to mask business models that remain, at their core, inherently extractive.
The literature cites a textbook example of this. There's a major fizzy drink company boasting loudly about using recycled plastic bottles.
I think we all know the type of ads they run.
Oh, yeah. They market themselves globally as these huge champions of the circular economy, yet they conveniently ignore the exploitative working conditions in their manufacturing plants.
On the water issues, too.
Exactly. They completely omit the fact that their massive water extraction operations cause severe drinking water shortages for the actual local communities living around those very factories.
So they just put a green halo on one tiny fraction of their supply chain while ignoring the broader systemic damage.
Precisely. And beyond corporate PR tactics, there are also hard economic and physical limits to scaling circularity.
Yeah, like if circular production strategies make it significantly cheaper to manufacture goods, doesn't the retail price just drop? Which, just encourages people to buy way more stuff.
You've just described the rebound effect.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it's a classic economic paradox where increased efficiency actually leads to greater overall consumption. Think about the historical shift to highly efficient LED light bulbs.
Right, they use a fraction of the electricity of the old incandescent ones.
Exactly. So the theory was that LEDs would drastically reduce global energy consumption. But instead, because it became so ridiculously cheap to light things, people started leaving their lights on all night.
Or illuminating entire buildings just for decoration.
Right. The environmental energy gains that we made through technological efficiency were completely erased by the sheer volume of increased consumption.
So if a company makes recycled clothing cheaper to produce, consumers just buy a higher volume of clothing. It totally defeats the purpose.
And eventually you run into the inescapable reality of thermodynamics and entropy.
Wait.
Well, how many times can that fizzy drink company actually recycle the same plastic bottle before the material simply breaks down?
Oh, right, because it's not infinite.
Exactly. The laws of physics dictate that materials degrade with use and thermal processing. Like every time you recycle paper, the intense mechanical and chemical processes cause the cellulose fibers to get shorter and weaker.
So it just turns to mush.
Yeah, basically. After 5 or 6 cycles, those fibers become a useless sludge that just cannot hold together to form paper anymore.
Wow.
So even in a perfect, theoretically flawless circular economy, material degradation means you will always need a steady stream of reagent inputs just to maintain product quality.
Man.
This raises an important question. If massive corporations use circularity as a marketing gimmick, and global cities struggle with the rebound effect and the deeply entrenched momentum of linear supply chains, where is true circularity actually functioning right now?
And the answer takes us completely away from global supply chains and down to the micro level. It takes us to ecovillages.
Yes, the living laboratories.
Exactly. The sources describe these as living laboratories for the circular economy. They are intentionally designed small communities, often 50 to 250 people, though some specific models operate with as few as 5 to 150 residents.
Really tight-knit.
Very.
Yeah.
They utilize participatory, bottom-up methods to create social and natural environments that are deeply regenerative. They aren't sitting around waiting for international climate treaties. They are prototyping the future right now. Today.
The Findhorn Ecovillage in Scotland is a great example of this. It was founded back in 1962, and they've been iterating on this exact concept for decades.
Decades before it was cool.
Way before, and their operational ethos goes far beyond simple municipal recycling programs. They actively co-create with nature. Like, they construct their housing out of highly repurposed material.
Oh, right, the shipping container.
Shipping containers, locally sourced stone, and even straw bales for natural insulation.
And their infrastructure is intensely localized, so they don't have to rely on massive municipal grids. The sources actually detail their proprietary sewage treatment plant, which is wild.
Oh, the living machine.
Yes. Instead of pumping wastewater to a chemical facility miles away, they use a biological system called a living machine right there in the village. It uses a series of tanks containing specific plants, algae, and bacteria to naturally treat the community's wastewater.
Which is incredible.
And then that cleaned water is recycled directly back into the village for toilet flushing and agricultural irrigation. They've effectively closed their entire local water loop.
It's brilliant. And we also see this operational model brought into dense urban environments too, like Hanover's Ecovillage in Germany.
Right.
They heavily utilize shared resources and communal utilities. This allows them to completely bypass the traditional linear trap of modern neighborhoods.
What do you mean by the linear trap?
Well, think about a normal suburb. Every single household buys, maintains, and stores their own lawnmower, their own washing machine, their own set of power tools.
Oh, yeah, which mostly just sit in the garage doing nothing 99% of the time. I mean, I find the Hanover model fascinating, but I do have to ground this in some reality for a second. What happens when the communal washing machine inevitably breaks, and no one wants to actually pay for the repair?
The classic roommate problem.
Yes. How do they navigate the inherent friction of shared ownership without it just devolving into a tragedy of the commons situation?
That is exactly where local governance comes in. They actively worked to adjust local zoning regulations to allow for a highly formalized, sharing-based economy.
So it's not just handshake agreements.
No, not at all. It's not just neighbors loosely borrowing tools based on goodwill. There are structured communal funds, strict maintenance schedules, and shared financial responsibilities legally baked right into the governance of the village itself. It formalizes stewardship.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because they aren't just sharing the cost of the tools. They're actually sharing the financial gains of the community.
Yes.
But again, I have to ask, how does an eco-village actually survive financially when it's still, embedded within a global, profit-driven capitalist world?
Right. Funding a circular microsystem inside a massive linear world is the critical tension here. The Awra Amba community found a highly effective balance by generating income through ecotourism,
Oh, smart.
plus small-scale regenerative farming and handcrafted goods. But the key to their long-term resilience is that they equally split the profits generated from these communal enterprises among the members.
So everyone benefits directly.
Exactly. That shared economic game promotes the deep social cohesion you absolutely need to maintain rigorous, sustainable practices day in and day out.
But, the transition to circularity isn't always an automatic financial success story.
Definitely not.
The sources present this really complex, kind of counterintuitive case study from Bendungan Village in Indonesia. They attempted to turn their local waste into a true economic engine by setting up a garbage bank.
Yeah, they secured private funding for heavy industrial machinery, stuff that could shred and melt plastic waste, converting it into thick plastic blocks and briquettes.
And then they'd sell the briquettes.
Right, they could be sold as alternative fuel to local factories. They also trained members to turn recycled waste into complex handicrafts.
Which sounds perfect.
On paper, it is the ultimate circular economy success story, right? Environmental waste becomes a tangible product, and that product becomes community income.
Yet their circular economy model actually struggled financially. And it struggled precisely because the villagers were already successfully living a low-waste lifestyle.
What's fascinating here is the sheer systemic irony.
Right.
The villagers simply didn't produce enough plastic waste locally to keep those expensive recycling machines running at a profitable volume.
Which highlights this underlying mechanic of the recycling industry that usually just gets ignored. Massive capital expenditures for heavy recycling machinery require a constant, massive influx of raw material.
In this case, trash.
Exactly, trash, just to amortize the cost of buying and running the machines. The linear economy is actually subsidizing the global recycling industry through sheer overwhelming volume.
It's totally backwards.
It is. When you remove that massive volume of waste because your community is actually being sustainable, the recycling facility basically goes bankrupt.
It perfectly illustrates the danger of pasting a linear capitalist profit expectation onto a circular system.
Yeah.
Because in a linear economy, profit relies entirely on high volume and constant throughput. But the fundamental goal of circularity is to drastically reduce throughput.
Right. If your business model requires people to constantly throw things away just so you have enough raw material to recycle and stay in business, you haven't escaped the linear economy at all.
No, you really haven't. You've just monetized the trash can.
And compounding the issue for Bendungan Village, the recycled handicrafts they produced really struggled to find buyers. Consumers outside the village, in the broader market, simply didn't place a high economic value on them.
Which proves that micro-communities can flawlessly manage resources internally, but they often hit a brick wall when forced to compete in a traditional external market.
So how do we fix that?
Well, translating the ethos of the eco-village into broader urban infrastructure requires a profound cultural shift. The research makes it very clear that moving to a circular economy in a major city is not about just rolling out slightly more efficient municipal recycling bins.
Right, it's bigger than that.
Much bigger. It requires moving from a societal mentality of use and dispose to one of care and stewardship.
And the sources anchor this necessary shift in the 9R framework. And it's crucial for you listening to understand the hierarchy of these Rs. Recycling is actually near the very bottom of the list.
Yeah, it's basically a last resort before the landfill.
Exactly. At the very top, you have rethink and refuse, meaning simply choosing not to consume a product in the first place or designing a product so it just doesn't generate waste.
And then you move down the chain.
Right. Through reuse, repair, refurbish, remanufacture, and repurpose.
And there is a vast mechanical difference between those levels. Take a broken laptop, for example. Repairing that laptop keeps the item completely intact, requiring minimal new energy.
It's fixing what's broken.
Exactly. Now, refurbishing might involve upgrading the hard drive and replacing the battery to extend its life, but remanufacturing, that requires shipping it to a facility, tearing the item completely down to its core metallic and plastic components, and rebuilding it to original factory specifications.
Which obviously takes significantly more global transport and energy.
Way more.
Which is why cities are actively trying to teach these specific high-level skills on a neighborhood level to avoid that energy-intensive remanufacturing stage altogether.
Yeah, like what's happening in the Netherlands?
Yes, in The Hague. The municipality set up the Circular Lab 070 in the Lake District. And it's not just some boring policy document. It is a physical space where they teach everyday residents circular interior design skills.
That is so cool.
They literally show people mechanically how to repair and redesign their own living rooms using repurposed materials.
By directly transferring those technical skills to citizens, the city enables the repair and refurbish tiers of that 9R framework. They are empowering residents to extend the life of their household goods rather than just discarding them when they look a bit worn out.
The Hague also introduced this app called the Kringloop Sparpas, which effectively gamifies circularity.
I love a good gamification strategy.
Yeah, he's really clever. When citizens donate items to local secondhand stores, they earn digital points on the app. They can then spend those points to buy other secondhand goods, or they can donate the cash value of the points to a local charity.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It incentivizes sustainable behavior while creating a closed-loop microeconomy where the financial value never actually leaves the immediate neighborhood.
And we see a different but equally effective community-driven momentum in Prague. The sources detail the whole Livis Garden, which started in 2012 as a single local urban agriculture project.
Just one garden.
Just one. But that one garden acted as a powerful catalyst, sparking the creation of approximately 60 more community gardens across Prague.
Okay, but how exactly does one garden trigger 60 more? Like, was it driven by a massive policy shift from the central city government?
Not at all. It was actually a viral community movement fueled by visible proof of concept and highly active shared knowledge networks.
Word of mouth, basically.
Exactly. Once residents saw a functioning, tangible example of a regenerative hub, successfully composting local organic waste and reducing the emissions associated with transporting commercial food, the original organizers actively shared their blueprints.
They didn't gatekeep the information.
Nope. They open-sourced their operational methods, everything from securing land permits to crop rotation schedules. Those spaces built the deep social ties and community resilience that form the bedrock of any successful eco-village, but scaled across an entire capital city.
So, what does this all mean? We have navigated from the baseline of planetary resource boundaries to Scottish biological sewage systems, the throughput economics of Indonesian garbage banks, and gamified interior design in the Netherlands.
Synthesizing all this material, the core takeaway is that the circular economy is truly our most viable escape route from a take-make-waste model that is actively liquidating our planet's natural capital.
It's the only way out.
But relying solely on massive global corporations to scale this up is incredibly dangerous. It almost inevitably invites greenwashing and the rebound effect we talked about earlier.
Right.
The real, undeniable proof of concept exists in these small, regenerative communities. They demonstrate that when you combine localized, sustainable infrastructure with a genuine culture of stewardship, the circular economy functions beautifully.
And for you, the listener, participating in this doesn't require going completely off the grid or building a house out of straw bales.
Because that would be cool.
It would be very cool. But the transition starts with incredibly small, localized actions. It starts with choosing to repair a broken appliance instead of immediately replacing it. It means utilizing a neighborhood tool library instead of buying a power drill that you're going to use exactly twice a decade. It is fundamentally about shifting your personal mindset away from the engineered convenience of disposability.
And that shift in mindset leads to a rather profound realization about how we interact with the physical world. In a truly circular economy, the concept of ownership fundamentally changes.
How so?
Well, you don't actually own the atoms and molecules that make up your phone, your clothes, or your car. You are merely their temporary custodian. So the next time you buy something, I'd encourage you to ask yourself, am I the end of the line for this object destined to throw it into a landfill? Or am I just a brief, responsible chapter in its much longer story?
I love that. But that does raise a final, slightly uncomfortable thought for you to chew on before we go. If these true circular economies only seem to thrive perfectly in micro-societies, capped at around 150 people to maintain those tight-knit sharing economics and deep social trust, what happens when they succeed and naturally want to grow?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Right. Can a massive, sprawling megacity of 10 million people ever truly operate as a single circular organism? Or are we destined to fracture back into thousands of tiny, disconnected eco-villages just to survive?
Something to think about.
Definitely. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.